All right. Are we ready to go?
So on mine, it still says setting up your webinar for YouTube Live, so I'm just gonna let it finish.
Okay, it says on mine, webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
Okay,
All
so
right,
it does look like it's all set up, so
there we go. So
There
I'd
we
like to
go.
call this meeting, this special meeting of the Community Services Committee of the Norwalk Common Council to order. This is Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. And with us tonight, we have Councilperson Barbara Smith, Councilperson Greg Burnett, and myself, David Huvelman. As of right now, we do not have a quorum, so we are not able to vote on any matters that come before us this evening, but we will proceed as we can. So first would be public comments, and I would open the floor to any member of the public who is here. I do not see anyone in the attendee list. And does any of the members of the committee have anything that was sent to them that needs to be brought forward in public comment this evening? No. All right. Seeing none, we will close public comment and we will move to item number 3, the presentation by the Chief of Community Services, Lamont Daniels, City of Norwalk Community Impact Mini Grant Program. And I believe that's actually going to be presented by Ms. Ana Vivian Estrella.
Yes, so I will be presenting. Let me just share my screen. Does everyone see the presentation that says Norwalk Community Services Department?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so the mini grant. So I just want to go over and level set a little bit about the mini grant and its key features. So it's a maximum grant amount of $10,000. It was open to all eligible nonprofits that had an annual organizational budget under $1 million. The total allocation in its original form was going to be $100,000, but the mayor and Lamont were able to increase that to $150,000 because we received such a big response to these mini grants. It is project-based funding to support smaller nonprofit organizations in Norwalk. And because of that, it was a modified application process, and it will also be a modified reporting requirement. Lamont, the Chief Officer of Community Services, was able to do 2 informational sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening, to make sure that everybody would have access to ask questions. And he went through the application and its purpose. And so those informational webinars were posted on the city website and made available to everybody that wanted to apply for the mini grant opportunity. In addition to that, Fairfield County's Community Foundation provided in-kind support to the applicants, and a number of them did take advantage of it, and I'll speak on that a little bit later. So for the application, the focus areas were health, and that included medical and mental health, education, so all types of academic supports and enrichment activities, and safety net, so basic needs, anything that the community felt there was a gap in, they could express that, and it would be categorized under safety net. Out of the 40 applications we received, you can see it was pretty robust on the education side at almost 50% at 47.5. Health was at 25%, and safety net was at 27.5. So it was a pretty good spread, but it was more heavier on the educational side for the applicants that we had in this mini grant process. For the statistics regarding the applications, like I mentioned, it was 40 applications. 9 of them received the Fairfield County's Community Foundation sponsored support. And that was a review of their application or an opportunity to speak to an expert in the grant writing process so that they could get guidance and get their questions answered so that their application could be as strong as possible. The request for fundings ranged from $1,500 over to $13,660. And if you added up all those applications, the total request amounted to $358,947. So from its original form of 100,000, we definitely blew that out of the water in requests. And the 150 still was difficult to divvy up and make sure that the money stretched as far as it could. The proposed awards, what we're here tonight to look at really was the 20 applicants where we're proposing awards that range from $1,125 to $10,000. The total would be that 150,000 that was mentioned that we were able to push the award to. So the process was that the applications were reviewed by the panel comprised of Fairfield County Community Foundation Vice President, Grants and Programs. That's Latanya Russell Humes. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Latanya? Okay, perfect. I did not have occasion to say her full name prior to today, so I'm going to give myself credit for pronouncing it correctly. And she was great in this process. The City of Norwalk's DEI officer, Latanya, who's also on this call, and the City of Norwalk Human Services Director. So that's me, Anna Vivian. The applications were scored on the following criteria. So need, focus, fiscal and sustainability, evaluation of their program, priority, and innovation. We did have to level set because it was a modified application. The applicants, had difficulty flushing out all these points, but we've taken that feedback and we really looked at how we could be as conscientious moving forward when we do modified applications. And based off of the final scores, the applicants were granted full or partial funding, or in this process where we're proposing they get full or partial funding. Now we get to the meat of it. So here are the proposed recipients. English Learner Support Services of Fairfield County. Their proposed impact was to increase after-school supplemental English support to students with limited or interrupted formal education. And our proposal is 10,000. I won't actually go through every single one unless you guys want me to. But you can see here that it ranges from very specific targeted educational opportunities and supports to safety net regarding things like freezers, wheeled coolers that will increase a pantry's impact. And then we also have health, but it's a wellness. So some of these programs actually were able to cover more than one focus area. So in here, we have the English Learner Support Services, Intempo, Child Advocates of Southwestern Connecticut, Macedonia Church, Norwalk Education Foundation, the House of Darla, and Smart Kids with Learning Disability Countdown to Kindergarten. There's 3 of these slides. So I just want to pause. Is there any questions about these recipients? Or can I move forward? Greg?
Yes, thank you, Anna Vivian. I guess my basic question is, was there a requirement that these organizations have a presence, or the funding that they would be receiving would be utilized within Norwalk?
Yes.
And Norwalk and Norwalk residents would be the recipient of these services? Because some of them, for example, it says Child Advocates of Southwest Connecticut. It's hard to tell if they even have a Norwalk presence.
Absolutely. So at the end of the proposed recipients, I do have a slide about recipient statistics. 100% of them said that they are going to use this funding for all of Norwalk. So none of them distinguished and said they are only going to do one zip code, and none of them, and they all agreed that this money would be served for Norwalk residents only.
Great, thank you.
I just would like to pause for a moment to let the record reflect that Councilperson Diana Revolus has joined the meeting at 6:45. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, great.
No, that's okay.
Does any other council person have any questions regarding this set of proposed recipients? Okay. So in this slide, you'll see, again, we have a mix between targeted efforts on the education front, health. There's a combination of health and safety net supports. And we have the Norwalk Art Space, Umbrella Club, Girls on the Run, Greater Hartford, Norwalk River Rowing Association, specifically their Reach Out and Row program, Live Girl Inc., Save Inc., Youth Business Initiative, specifically their YBI Workforce Program. Any questions regarding this set of proposed recipients?
No, I don't think so.
So this is the remaining slide of the recipients. We have Elder House, and this was a unique one because the seniors in this program were losing their funding. So they would have otherwise not been able to participate in the day program anymore. And so this funding will be able to be braided so that they can continue to receive those day services. And it's specifically low-income seniors with dementia. Circle of Friends, Nice Inc. This is not their festival that they're the most well-known for, but actually a new addition, a new education enrichment program where they're going into the schools to increase multicultural immersive arts education and enrichment. Comunidades Sin Fronteras, they'd like to do what they're calling an iChip program where they're targeting immigrant children and they're trying to bridge that gap between their attendance. What are the barriers for them to complete their high school education or GED and college exploration? Norwalk Stratford Grassroots Tennis Education, specifically their college and career readiness program, and Mont des Olivers Seventh-day Adventist Church, where they, again, this is not, although it's garnished for their pantry and providing food services, what they're actually requesting money for is to purchase a minibus so that they can get the food, the volunteers, and the clothing to Open Door shelter so that they can increase their impact. Any questions regarding this set of recipients?
I did just a brief question just with Mount de Olivers, the church. That's an interesting partnership for them with Open Door. What is it that they're able to do?
So
by
what
having
they
a van?
Sure. So what they currently do is they'll fundraise for the pantry. They'll get all of the food together. They'll get donations of clothing. And all of their volunteers will then bring the supplies over to Open Door. In their application, they outline that they also serve the food at the kitchen. And so they're doing this multi-pronged approach in partnership with Open Door. But right now they're reliant on their volunteers' cars and their own personal vehicles. This would give them the opportunity to buy the minivan. It's not the full funding, but it'll contribute to them purchasing a minivan so that they can then continue this impact and get more things over to Open Door when they make their trips there.
I see a councilperson, Greg Burnett. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Tuberman. A couple questions. One, was it a requirement for each of these organizations to be a 501c3,
Yes.
a nonprofit?
Yes.
Because I saw the church listed there, and I'm like, is that an entity of the church that's a nonprofit?
They all submitted their 501c3 paperwork. And we will be going through everything to make sure that everything's an eligible expense. But yes, they were required to show that they would be eligible for these funds.
Okay. And second, and you might cover, you might be touching on this in future slides, but I'm curious as to the differentiation between awards. Like why do some organizations get 10,000, others get 5,000? What was the thinking behind the distribution of the amount?
Sure. So I didn't go into detail in the next slide, so I'd be happy to go through it right now.
Okay. No, you can, I can wait. No problem.
Okay. But I'll definitely cover that and I'll answer your question. And I'll also let my co-panelists on here answer that because we were very thoughtful in trying to make sure we could make the maximum amount of impact with the funds that we had.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the proposed recipients list? No. So here are some overall stats about the recipients. Is just to answer the question that you asked, Councilperson Greg Burnett. We had the first 100,000, and at first we said, okay, these are very small grant amounts. They're going to make a huge impact for these agencies. So we didn't necessarily want to take away, and they scored really, really well. So these were the top tier applicants where we gave them 100% of their funding. So those 10,000 marks, that's 100%. If a couple of them were at 7,000, and that's because that's what they requested. So it was 100% of what they requested. We didn't give them 10,000 if they didn't ask for 10,000. When we found out that we might be able to get an additional 50,000, we conferred with each other, and Lutanya, being in this space as a professional, she said that something that they've historically done was break it up. So now creating tiers. So that first tier got full funding, 100% of their funding. The second tier would get 75% of their funding, and the third tier would get 50% of their funding. And so that's what we did. And that's why you'll see the 7,500. So if they asked for 10,000 and they ended up in that second tier, what they are now proposed to get as an award is 7,500. And if they ended up in the third tier, it was 50% of what they were asking. So again, if we use the 10,000 mark, they would then get 5,000. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So 75% of these organizations had organizational budgets that are under $551,000. So we're really talking about small to mid-size agency. I wouldn't even say mid-size, because as we all know, 500,000 can go in a blink of an eye when you're talking about salaries, supplies, time, specialists, anything you might need for these programs. And so 75% of them really had small budgets. Only a couple of them had budgets that were over that 551,000 mark. And looking at them, the applications that we're now proposing receive funding, it is in line with what you saw in their applications. So about 50% are in the education field, 30% in health, and 20% in safety net. I wanted to create another graphic just to show you the different types of categories, since I knew I wasn't going to be able to go into detail about every single applicant. But we had 14% in physical activities, which is important, 9.5 that were tailored towards basic needs, 14.3 that were tailored towards workforce and college readiness, 19% in arts and music enrichment, and 33.3% in specialized and targeted services. So these were the applicants where it was a really highly specialized population that they were trying to make an impact. So one of them is dealing with helping families that have chronic, severe, and rare diseases close the gap between what insurance covers and what they actually need. So it was a lot of applicants where they had specialized services that they're offering and trying to expand to the group that they are currently serving. I know that was a lot of information, so I just want to stop for questions. And just the last note on there is that 100% stated they will serve all of Norwalk, and this money is for Norwalk residents. So it's not going into general operating funds in that way.
Great, thank you, Anna Vivian. Do we have any, actually, if you're done with the graphics, if we want to, we can stop sharing your screen.
Yep,
All right,
absolutely.
thank you. And do we have any questions from any members of the committee? Councilperson Smith.
I actually don't have any questions, but I do have a few comments. First, I want to thank you so much for reaching out to the smaller nonprofits. We have heard a lot about the smaller nonprofits, and I really, really appreciate that you really focused on them. And I'm pleased to see the wide array of services that are being covered. The focus on health and education. I'm just really, really pleased with the way the process went. In particular, offering the help around the grant writing, so that really helps those smaller nonprofits to make sure that they dot all the I's and cross all the T's and provide all the information that's needed, because that is not an easy task, writing a grant, and it's got to be so specific. So I just really appreciate the way you went around this. We're able to disperse funds to so many really great organizations who are working with our kids and families.
Thank you, Councilperson Smith.
Any other questions from any members of the committee? Well, I would also just like to say thank you for the work that you guys put in, Latoya, Latanya, Anna Vivian. It's a new thing for us doing this type of work for the city and for the not-for-profits. And to sort of reiterate what Councilperson Smith said, just the fact that we're targeting the smaller not-for-profits and helping put money into the community in that way, I think is a wonderful thing, and I appreciate the work that you did. I especially am thankful for the partnership with Latanya, because of the work that's able to do, helping also people, the organizations able to get the grants, to be able to write the grant, learning to write the grant correctly, having their work looked at if they so choose. I think that was a wonderful addition to this. So I want to say thank you to you guys for the work that you've done. Councilwoman Revelous.
I so appreciate you. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, because I came late, so I didn't see everyone. I just wanted to double back, because I've heard it in different ways with you, Anna Vivian, that you've done amazing work, and everyone around you, Latoya, all of you. And I do appreciate the hear of a little bit of the annoyance from our other grants happening. And I do appreciate the help that was given. I'm just going to take the time to say I did see some names. And I, again, want to reiterate, I didn't see all of them. I still saw some names that I've seen already before. So I do see the bigger portion of going to a smaller. I would really like to see the next time we go around that, like, wow, we really are reaching out to brand new faces and places that are making changes here in our communities, for our children, for our families, for our elder, right? But that being said, I'm still very happy for it. I would just, hope that when we get into a space, if we do have this ability to do it again, we just broaden our focus on those smaller nonprofits, and exactly what you did on the help with the grants. I don't want to overlook that. Like, that's a big deal for small businesses, because not a lot of us or them understand any of that process, right? Like, that's a whole just life to be a grant writer, let alone trying to apply for one grant, right? So I appreciate that. I do want to say that, but I just also hope that we just broaden the space of who we're looking at, and who actually listens to know to apply in as well, because you can't control who applies to, right? So that being said, that's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely. And we did try to make a concerted effort to do outreach. We specifically asked known advocates in the community. There was a whole round table that we were aware of that we asked for outreach to go out to them. I know there was targeted efforts for any smaller nonprofits that anybody knew of to really apply. But like you mentioned, we can't control who applies, and we try to be as objective as possible and as thoughtful as possible. So to be perfectly honest, some of these applications weren't well written, and they didn't answer all of the questions. And we did a lot of digging. We did a lot of soul searching to see where we could find, to give you an example is they might have not mentioned that they do fundraising, but we were able to deduce that if their program costs 50,000 and they're asking for 10,000, they're fundraising, right? So even though they didn't explicitly state it, we did our due diligence to try to be as thoughtful and understanding of the fact that they're smaller nonprofits, so that maybe in an ordinary process or with a different funder or a different panel, their application probably would have been thrown out. But we really did as much as we could to support the applications that we could.
I will, that's why I do want to state that we have had these discussions on different type of forum and meetings, right? I do get that part. So I do want to acknowledge that's a big deal, and I thank you, thank your team, thank everyone for that. We can't control what that end does. But just hopefully that we get a space in place that we start seeing new names that we're like, oh, wow, that's even in Norwalk, we're doing that. You know what I mean? That would be great. That would be amazing. But again, being new, being small, that's why it might be, you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Great. Councilperson Greg Burnett.
Thank you, Chairman Hooverman. I guess my question is somewhat in line with the previous question and response. You shared with us that you had a scoring rubric, and there's obviously organizations that didn't, quote unquote, make the cut. So can you give us a sense of what they might have been missing without, going into a specific organization? What were some of the examples as to why an organization didn't raise to the level of being accepted to receive funding? What were some of the common threads in terms of what they were missing in their application?
Absolutely. So I'll start, but I definitely invite Latoya and Latanya to give comment. I mean, one of the most glaring things is not filling out anything. So we had applications where, as much as soul searching as we can do in the application, it's still what's written down. And if you don't say you're going to make an impact, giving us general information about your organization without saying you're going to do anything specific makes it really hard for us to pull out of it. So, something where we're like, oh, we're going to do great work and we're going to do great work with children, but you don't say how you're going to do it. You don't say what you're doing. You don't say how many kids. You don't say what the plan is. And I get it. And those are the pieces where it's like, I wish they had just said, our plan is to do journals with kids so that they have expression. We really, really tried to draw as much as we could from what was presented, even if it wasn't in the format that we were requesting it. But there was some applications that just blatantly didn't give us an impact. So Latoya, Latanya, I don't know if you want to add to it.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, to echo what Anna Vivian is saying, is like, just from that inclusion space, like, there were a lot of applications that just didn't have enough information, and we really did do our research and like she said, really soul search and meet people where they're at, because we also understood that we wanted to be inclusive, and we wanted to give this opportunity to people. But I think every section had numbers, and we scored those sections individually, and then it auto-populated. So even just with that process itself, it was created so that it kind of just did its own thing, and we treated every section individually, really taking a look. The process took hours and hours and hours, hours and hours. And so we, really looked at every application with a fine-tooth comb, and made sure that, it had the most equitable outcome. So I think that's it. And I also just want to say, I think this was also really telling of the high need in our community for people to understand this process, because yes, we want to give people these smaller grants, but we'd love for people in our community to be able to qualify for big federal grants. And so we want to prepare them for that, you know, from these kinds of opportunities. So even throughout the process, offering space for people to come and ask questions, to get one-on-one help with their application upon submitting it, I think, you know, just offering those opportunities was a help. And there were organizations that took advantage of that. And so just thinking about how we can continue that work, but it was definitely done with fidelity.
I think the only thing that I would add very specifically, Councilman Burnett, is there were times where the ask was more than what the program budget was. And so something just that simple, because that says to me, well, how are you paying for, we can't be the sole provider, or no funding source can be the sole provider for a particular program, because how does that program get sustained once that funding goes away? Things, and I think Anna Vivian mentioned, not just clearly nowhere could it be discerned exactly what the program was doing. And to the point of, and I do think, as I looked at these and I looked at them as a grant maker, from that perspective, irrespective of what they were asking for, it was very evident, right, that some of it is just helping people to understand the logistics, because as many of you have said, writing a grant can be tedious, it can be intimidating. Many of these, and I do want to add, some of the organizations that were not funded were not small by any means. Some of them were much larger organizations who actually probably had greater capacity to produce a better grant than they provided. We at the foundation are also very committed to, as Councilwoman Revelis said, and I hope I pronounced that properly, to finding those organizations, not just in Norwalk, but certainly in Norwalk, across Fairfield County, that are underfunded, under-resourced, unknown in some ways. And more often than not, we recognize that those are what I call mom and pop shops. They're usually one or two folks who are passionate about whatever the work is, and they just don't have the capacity, because they are the one person. They do the work, they run the organization, they do all of it. And that was one of the reasons why, when I spoke with Lamond about this several months ago, the question I asked was, how can we support the organizations in the community? That was the position that I came from, and then I ended up being a panelist. But and that was why we sort of decided, okay, one thing we can do, it was a short turnaround, was at least provide a consultant that could provide one-to-one support for any organization that wanted it. And our commitment is to provide grant writing workshops and training opportunities. We'll do quite a number of them over the course of this year. And what I've said to Anna Vivian is, we would like to personally invite those who were not funded, even those who were, because to be quite frank with you, if they're going to compete at state funding or other foundation funding, they're going to need to hone some of those skills as well. And we're committed to doing that, and it will cost the organization nothing to get it.
Thank you for putting that out there. We appreciate that very much. Councilwoman Revelis, you had your hand up. Do you have another question?
So you both spoke it well. So what I was thinking, I feel so improper just saying first names. I'm sorry. Latoya, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
You're my girl. I'm sorry. Miss Fernandez, thank you. What I heard from you especially is like there's an education need here, right? Because that's what I heard. Okay, so there's an education need that would be those smaller mom and pop shops that would need that. And then Miss, I just want to get your last name. Humes? Did I say? Yes.
Yes.
That the fact of like, but you know, a lot of times it is that mom and pop shop that does need 50,000, and the start is the 10,000 because they can't get anybody yet. So I'll take 5,000, 10,000, 50,000. I need 50,000, but I'm coming here because I need something. And I'm the only person I work it, I do it, I live it. I really want the consultation, but I don't even have the time to come over and talk to you one-on-one. How do we help them? That's why I don't want to, you spoke it, that's why I put my hand down, but it was just, I felt it just would be broader conversation to have, like maybe offline, to then, how do we answer to that, talking to you guys? But I think you just spoke it so well, that's why I put my hand down. But you just brought up to, how do we educate? How do we help that? How do we strengthen, right? That's all.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. And since it's new for Norwalk to be doing this, I think that that's part of the learning curve on the process is starting to be able to put the information out there about this program, about other programs that we may be able to fund, and then helping to educate, just as you're talking, Councilwoman. Great. Are there any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to move to the action item then. And the action item reads, number 4, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all documents or amendments as may be necessary to disperse the Community Impact Mini Grant Program funding to support smaller nonprofits allocated to the Community Services Department. Can I get a motion? Motion from Councilwoman Revelous, and all in favor?
A question on the motion. Should the motion include the dollar amount that we are distributing, the $150,000, to be specific?
I had asked Chief Daniels about that, and the reason is that this is just to execute the documents and amendments to actually fund the, or not fund, but to disperse the monies. That the money is already in the budget, was allocated within the budget. That was my understanding, because I'd asked that question. But do you feel that we need to add that? We can add the dollar amount for the
well, if the I would say that if the dollar amount is already in the budget, that means there's a line item. So then I would think that the dollar amount and the account number should be in this specific motion, the specific dollar amount of $150,000 and the account number, which has already been allocated in the budget.
Okay. Do we have we have the $150,000 dollar amount, but we do not have an account number, correct, Anna Vivian?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't have access to the community service level budget book to pull that number. Would we be able to move the motion forward with the understanding that the account number could be added in the morning?
Would you feel comfortable that we can do that? And then it would be on the agenda for the Common Council, would have the dollar amount and the account number? Is that fine? Councilperson Burnett?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move the item as is, with the understanding that when it goes to the council on Tuesday, it will also include the dollar amount of $150,000 and the account number associated with, or account numbers if there are other numbers, because I know you said that you pulled another 50,000 into it for the grant. All right, so that being said, I would like to call the vote. All those in favor of moving this item forward, please signify by raising your hand. And opposed have the same right. Abstentions, motion carries unanimously. I want to thank you, everybody. And thank you guys for the work that you've done on this, and looking forward to more work of this nature for our lovely city of Norwalk.
Good time.
That is the only action item for this evening. So with that, I will
Motion.
call for, yep, there we go.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, Abstentions, motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned for this meeting. Thank you very much,
Good night.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your.
Thank you.
Quickly, just that it says that our next meeting on the agenda is August 17th. I will confirm with you in the next day or so. I believe that that meeting is going to be canceled because I do not believe there are any other action items for August that would need to be addressed. All right. So thank you.
Happy
Everybody.
summer.
Have a lovely evening.
Night.
Yeah.
Good night.
night.
Good night.
Do you recognize her?